Appamada's programs and facilities are supported through your generosity. Your support really does make a huge difference. You'll find a link for contributions on the website at appamada.org/contribute. Thank you so much.
So I wanted to start by, I don't know if you guys see it, but in front of Connie, there's this wonderful reflection. I've been really getting into this reflection business recently. It's so beautiful. It's like this golden, I don't know, golden mirror there right in front of Connie. I just think that's so lovely. Anyway, I've been thinking a lot about spring and how glorious spring is. Anyway, I've just been appreciating everything that's, spring is the prime time in my garden, so everything's coming up and blooming all over the place, and it's so exciting. It's not like I do anything. They all do what they do. I let them do it wherever they want to do it. So anyway, I get really enthusiastic about this time of year. So I was reflecting a little bit about the quote that I read earlier. I liked it so much, and I wanted to read it again. It's not exactly what I'm going to talk about, but it's related, very closely related. And it's a quote by Sarah Conover, I presume is how she pronounces it. And it's, "My suffering does not set me apart. It makes me belong. I now know that my being with whatever arises is a purification, a lens polished, often with tears from the past, with which I must stand firm against the waves of segregating myself from the world." So I was kind of thinking about that. Okay, then we'll begin. So as you all probably know, the Buddha talked about the 3 marks of existence. And one of them is impermanence, the things that the fact that everything changes, everything changes. And then that there's no self, meaning no separate self that you can cling to. That's kind of a delusion that most of us have about ourselves, that we're a concrete thing that doesn't change much, and it just isn't so. We're an ongoing, changing thing, just like everything else. And there's no real self as such. And then the third one is suffering. The suffering comes from the fact, partially from the impermanence, because everything changes and we kind of like things not to change so much. We'd kind of like things to keep going along as they are, or sometimes we want them to change when it's not positive. But anyway, it causes some suffering. And probably the more important thing that causes a lot of suffering is when we have this strong sense of self. Me, I, that kind of stuff. So I wanted to focus on the latter, the no self, partially due to this thing that we read earlier. My suffering does not set me apart, it makes me belong. I now know that my being with whatever rises is a purification, a lens polished, often with tears from the past, with which I must stand firm against the waves of segregating myself from the world. So it's the no self. So especially in the West, we're raised to, actually it's so much a part of our culture to focus on a self, a separate identity, and how am I going to develop myself? So we're constantly thinking in these terms as it's something real and concrete, the self. And we ask, what do I want? What do I need? What am I going to do? And how can I improve myself? So there are plenty of products and books and articles and groups that would like to help us to develop a better self. But what if we focused and lived with the notion of interconnection, how we are connected with each other, human beings, actions that take into consideration care for the world, other humans, animals, the earth itself? What would this world be like? We might not be in the ecological crisis that we're in right now, or the political division. If we lived with the sense of interbeing, as Thich Nhat Hanh calls it, that is, seeing ourselves a part of a huge web of interconnecting parts. It's interconnecting parts, and not just humans, as I said, but including all beings, all sentient beings. What would it look like to make decisions based on this larger view? It's a larger view and a more encompassing view. So even in the most intimate relationships, we humans sometimes feel attachment towards others. To me, it seems kind of natural. But in a way, it's a kind of grasping when we attach to another. It's where perhaps we want to feel more secure. So we have this person that we care about, but maybe they shouldn't change, because if they change, that will spin me off or something. Or maybe I just want to feel more love, or feel loved in a certain way, or feel a sense of self-worth from the other person. And this is when it stops being love per se, but this kind of grasping and attachment. And it's not very fruitful. It's not real love. So this kind of attachment is less about love and more about meeting our own needs. So these sorts of situations, when we're more focused on the idea of self and maintaining the self, tend to lead to more suffering, not just for ourselves, but for others as well. And there are many ways that we suffer through anger, hate, and delusion. So I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. This is a gross example, and it's one that I've mentioned a million times in here, and I'll mention again. I think probably that one of the main, I didn't figure this out for a really long time, that the major problem that I was having with my mother, she's difficult. That's a true story. But I wanted our relationship to be different, and I wanted her to be different. And once I realized that, it changed things considerably. I was thinking about what I wanted, myself. It wasn't considering her as what can we do together. So it was a big change with that different point of view. Changed a lot. So one of the things that I like so much about this little piece that I read at the beginning is that the suffering does not have to create separation. Sometimes when we suffer, we do go into ourselves. We feel like we need to isolate in our own pain, or we don't want other people to know that we're suffering with something. Or, there's a myriad of reasons of why we might want to be separate. It's to our advantage, or maybe we just feel separate. We feel alone in our own pain, or we feel alone that we're the only ones that feel X, when in reality, most of us kind of have the same kinds of feelings about things. They're human feelings. So to separate means to create more separation and therefore more suffering. Indeed, it is through suffering, as this lady says, that it is through suffering that we actually belong. We recognize that we're part of humanity in our suffering. It's the commonality among us, all us humans. So in this way, we are not at all separate. because we suffer. And when we turn towards our suffering and be with it, we can remember we are not alone. Suffering itself is enough. We don't need the aloneness to go with it. But being with others and recognizing our similarities, we don't feel quite so alone. So I remember I had a really hard time with the death of my father. And I was, beside myself. It's a fairly normal sort of human way of feeling, I guess. And I didn't know what to do with my grief. And I didn't feel like being around other people. And I did isolate for a while, which is not the best thing to do. And until there was a group of ladies that I was friends with, it was part of the Artist Way. And so they were having a meeting. And I thought, I don't particularly want to go to that, but I'll go. So I went, and the most amazing thing happened. I was talking to them. They were asking me what was going on, typical thing. How are you doing? And I said, well, I'm not doing so great. My dad died. And so what actually happened was the way probably most of the people in the room reacted to me was, oh yeah, I know what that's like. My dad died, so many years ago, and it was really hard, and whatever. There were various renditions of the same thing. But what I came away with is, this is just kind of classic, that the compassion that I felt that they offered me because of their own experience and being together in that just made all the difference in the world. I was no longer alone with my grief. And it made such a difference to be able to do that. And they gave me a great gift. They gave me two gifts, actually. They gave me a gift of being with me at that time. And then secondly, they gave me compassion. Compassion, I think, is not something you really learn on your own. It's something that you experience from another person, provides you compassion, and then you go, oh, gosh, that's such a wonderful thing. How can I do that with other people? So I've gone from compassion all the way from being separate, but I think it's important that this compassion is a big part of helping others not feel alone and helping ourselves not feel alone, because we aren't alone. We have so many things that indicate we're not alone. These beings that are around us, caring beings, and reflections of light on the floor. I don't know, that just warms my heart. There's all sorts of things that can bring us out of our separation and our suffering, even if it's just temporarily. And I think that a lot of, right now in the spring, sometimes it's more painful if you're suffering in the spring because it's such a joyous time and so much going on. But it's also an opportunity to open to what is going on. There's birth everywhere. There's creation everywhere. The whole world, certainly in the northern hemisphere, is in the southern hemisphere too, but in the opposite direction. And there's this great movement towards life and living and color, and it's just joyous and glorious. I love the spring. And it goes with migration, this whole turning of creatures, animals and birds that move. I mention this every year because I'm always wowed by it. Anyway, so that's about all I have to say today. It's not much, but I do want to do a little exercise with you guys about this, about suffering and what we do when we suffer. Where do we go with ourselves, with our suffering? Okay, so break up in groups of 3, and we'll have breakout rooms. And what we're going to do is we're going to write, and then we're going to talk amongst each other, and then we're going to come back and kind of sum up, and then go into our final bowing and stuff. So here are the questions. So the first thing is to, we're going to consider something that you've suffered with, not the worst possible thing, but something that you've struggled with, something you've gotten stuck in for a while. And just consider it, and maybe it might be something, and it's maybe something you've already worked through, not something it could be something you're still stuck in, but maybe better if it's already something you've kind of gotten through for the most part. And maybe it had to do with grief, anger, hate. Maybe it was just a bad situation. Any of those things. So just think of one. And then while you were suffering with this thing, did you seek out others to talk with that had similar experience, or did you just remain in solitude? Or did that change over time? Well, how did that go? And then the third thing is, did you separate, as you were suffering, did you separate from other people? Is that part of your habit pattern, I guess, is the question.
Isn't that the second thing?
No, the second thing was, well, they're related. The second thing was more, how did you deal with your suffering? So part of it is whether you, it wasn't so much about isolation. Yeah, it was very similar. But it's, do you seek out others, or did you remain by yourself? So those go together. And the last one is, in retrospect, what helped you most getting through your suffering? What helped you most? And did being around other people have an impact? That's it. Okay, so let's do 10 minutes to write on it, and then 10 minutes to discuss for the 3 people, 3 minutes each approximately. And then we'll return and have about 10 minutes just to see if anybody wants to share anything about that. And then we'll finish up. Okay, so I guess what I want to say is, does anybody have anything to report about that activity? Did you learn anything? How was it for you? Any comments? Right away. Okay, tell me. Claudine. Oh, you're muted, I think.
I know, yes. Well, first, a big thank you, because these breakout rooms and these exercises like the one you offered us are so helpful to open deeply, to share our vulnerability. And sharing our vulnerability is sharing our strengths too. So we were in a very nice group, and I'm sure every group was nice. And it was a real gift. And thank you, Laurie. I missed that type of exercise very much, because when I began with your Dharma talks, there were always one, and then during the times, no more. And I was very happy. Thank you very much.
Fun. I'm glad to hear it. Joel.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Laurie, for this opportunity. I am reminded that well, first of all, it was a wonderful opportunity to be with the people I was with, and to be reminded of something that happened in the class with John Eric and Jessica Steinbaumer, talking about Hakomi approaches to awakening, and that they led us in an exercise some weeks ago, which involved looking at another person and hearing them speak, and being open to see them as a child, as a young person, and then to see the marks of experience or even suffering in their present day face, and then to see them as a mirror, that is mirroring the same types of experiences, the same type of childhood, the same type of experience, the same type of suffering, and to recognize that those are joining us, that they are mirroring and joining us. So in our group, I actually chose to pass, right, because the topic I chose is the most difficult one for me, and it feels very raw right now. But I did get the opportunity in simply listening to these wonderful spiritual friends talk about things that are important in their lives that have to do with connecting with other people, or isolating, or feeling some suffering, and how that approaching and connecting with other people made a difference for them. So thanks for this, and I wanted to offer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much. Darcy.
I want to echo Claudine. These small, intimate groups are very special. And it's a way that, for me, it's easier to connect with people in a smaller group than a larger group. And the intimacy felt sweet and healing and much, much appreciated. And your topic was so right on. And yeah, I think when you talk about suffering, you can go either way with it. You can say, oh, I'm suffering. Nobody else is suffering like me, and you can separate. Or you can say, this suffering, this is everywhere. And when you're in a small group and people are really opening their hearts, you can't not see it. And that connects you. So, yeah, it was perfect for this talk for sure. And I wanted to thank you, and yeah, very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Darcy. Rosemarie.
In our group, it was just lovely to hear how people deal with these things. And I realized that I connect with others through Sangha, through my therapy, very, very selectively, and through spiritual friends, but not yet through friends that are not in the practice. So that's maybe a practice edge to work with now that we're raising that. And I also wanted to thank you for spring, because it's a wonderful reminder that is where we are, and it is glorious, and to be open to it. So thank you for that as well.
Thank you. Becky.
I'm not going to turn on my picture because I'm not able to sit very well, and I'm here. I came here today because I am suffering. So I just wanted to say how important that is, how important each of you are in my life, in each other's lives, because we can come be with even when we can't do with. And so I just wanted to say that it was perfect, because I had planned, if they had breakout rooms, I had planned to just leave at that point because it would be too hard, but I didn't. I stayed because this was the topic. So thank you.
Thank you, Becky, and thanks for hanging in there. Appreciate it. Connie.
The circles are back. Can you see the perfect circles down there? Just every once in a while. Oh, maybe you can't see it from over there. Perspective is so important.
Are they really round or are they oval?
Well, from my perspective, they're round. From your perspective, they're probably oval. My point in that is I don't think that isolation is always from people. I think we can get a lot by just reconnecting with natural phenomena and doing it without words. They really are. Yeah, but they come and they go all the time, and they're always moving, and sometimes they disappear, and the way that you look at it, from which direction or over time, changes the whole experience. And
It
I don't
is
know what that has to
funny.
do with anything, but yeah.
It's a marvel, truly.
It makes me happy. It erases much of my suffering just to sit here and watch the circles form and disappear. So yeah,
That's worth something. That's really worth
I
something.
think it's worth a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.